The 2007 Tour de France, the 94th running of the race, took place from July 7 to July 29, 2007. The Tour began with a prologue in London, and ended with a traditional finish in Paris. Along the way, the route also passed through Belgium and Spain. It was won by Spanish rider Alberto Contador. The Tour was marked by doping controversies, with 3 riders and 2 teams withdrawn during the race following positive doping tests, including pre-race favourite Alexandre Vinokourov and his Astana team. Following stage 16, the leader of the general classification, Michael Rasmussen, was removed from the Tour by his Rabobank team, who accused him of lying about the reasons for missing several drug tests earlier in the year. The points classification, indicated by the green jersey, was won for the first time by Tom Boonen, who had failed to complete the previous 2 tours after leading the points classification at times during each. The mountains classification, indicated by the polka dot jersey, was won by Mauricio Solo in his first Tour appearance. The general classification, indicated by the yellow jersey, was closely contested until the final time trial on stage 19. The top 3 riders, Alberto Contador in the yellow jersey as the leader, Cadel Evans in second, and Levi Leipheimer in third, were separated by only 2:49, with both Evans and Leipheimer recognized as far superior time trialists to Contador. In the end, each rider held his place after the final time trial, but with considerably slimmer margins, as the Tour ended with the smallest ever spread of only 31 seconds among the top 3 riders. Alberto Contador also won the young rider classification, indicated by the white jersey, as the best young rider. Teams. A total of 21 teams were invited to the 2007 Tour de France. Each team sent a total of 9 riders to participate in the Tour, which brought the starting total of the peloton to 189 riders. The 21 teams that took part in the race were, a Euro wild card entries, pre-race favourites, after the retirement of 7-time winner Lance Armstrong and with Ivan Basso and Floyd Landis not entering the Tour. The bookmakers' favourite to win the 2007 Tour de France was Alexandre Vinokourov, who was unable to start in 2006 due to lack of team members, but did win the 2006 Vuelta a Spa ±A. The main challengers were expected to be the 2006 Tour de France second-place finisher Andreas Klapp-Hagegraaff-Den and Alejandro Valverde, who dropped out of the 2006 Tour de France after a crash, but came second to Vinokourov in the 2006 Vuelta a Spa ±A. Shown in the table below are the riders that, according to the bookmakers on July 7, 2007, the start day of the 2007 Tour de France, had the best chances of winning the 2007 Tour. Janis Bracovia, Damiano Cuno, Tom Danielson and Coldo Gil were all offered at odds within the range of this table, but withdrew before the race field was finalised. Route and stages. The organisers of the Tour and London Mayor Ken Livingstone announced on January 24, 2006 that the start of the Tour would take place in London. Livingstone noted the 2 stages would commemorate the victims of the 7 July 2005 London bombings, saying having the Grand Hour copyright part on the 7th of July will broadcast to the world that terrorism does not shake our city. The routes for the prologue in London and the first full stage through Kent, finishing in Canterbury, were announced on February 9, 2006 at the Queen Elizabeth II Conference Centre. This was the 3rd time the Tour visited England, including Plymouth and in 2 stages in Kent, Sussex and Hampshire in. Tour director Christian Prudhomme unveiled the 2007 route in Paris on October 26, 2006. In total, the route covered 3,569.9 km, 2,218.2 mi. Classification leadership. There were 4 main classifications contested in the 2007 Tour de France, with the most important being the general classification. The general classification was calculated by adding each cyclist's finishing times on each stage. The cyclist with the least accumulated time was the race leader, identified by the yellow jersey. The winner of this classification was considered the winner of the Tour. In 2012, there were no time bonuses given. Additionally, there was a points classification, which awards a green jersey. In the points classification, cyclists get points for finishing among the best in a stage finish, or in intermediate sprints. The cyclist with the most points led the classification, and is identified with a green jersey. There was also a mountains classification. The organization categorized some climbs as either or kata copyright guri, first, second, third, or fourth category. Points for this classification were won by the first cyclists that reached the top of these climbs, with more points available for the higher categorized climbs. The cyclist with the most points led the classification, and was identified with a polka dot jersey. The fourth individual classification was the young rider classification, marked by the white jersey. This classification was calculated the same way as the general classification, but the classification was restricted to riders who were born on or after January 1, 1987. For the team classification, the times of the best 3 cyclists per team on each stage were added. The leading team is the team with the lowest total time. The riders in the team that lead this classification were identified with yellow numbers. For the combativity award, a jury gives points after each stage to the cyclists they considered most combative. The cyclist with the most votes in all stages leads the classification. The rows in the following table correspond to the jerseys awarded after that stage was run. Jersey wearers when one rider is leading 2 or more competitions. In Stage 1, Andreas Klapp-Den, who was second in the points classification, wore the green jersey, because Fabian Cancellara wore the yellow jersey as leader of the general classification during that stage. In Stage 8, Mauricio Sola, who was second in the young riders classification, wore the white jersey, because Linus Gerdemann wore the yellow jersey as leader of the general classification during that stage. In Stage 9, Sylvain Chavannes, who was second in the King of the Mountains classification, wore the polka dot jersey, because Michael Rasmussen wore the yellow jersey as leader of the general classification during that stage. In stages 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and 16, Mauricio Sola, who was second in the King of the Mountains classification, wore the polka dot jersey, because Michael Rasmussen wore the yellow jersey as leader of the general classification during that stage. In stage 18, 19, and 20, Amets Tsaruka, who was third in the young riders classification, wore the white jersey, because Alberto Contador wore the yellow jersey as leader of the general classification during that stage, and Mauricio Sola wore the polka dot jersey for leading the King of the Mountains classification. Other note: shortly after Michael Rasmussen won Stage 16, his Rabobank team removed him from the Tour for violation of team rules. Therefore in Stage 17, no one wore the yellow jersey. Final standings, general classification. UCI Pro Tour points. Cyclists in the UCI Pro Tour are awarded UCI Pro Tour points for their performance in the Tour de France. The winner of a stage receives 10 points, second receives 5 points and third 3 points. UCI Pro Tour points are also awarded for high places in the final classification, with 100 points for the overall winner. Doping scandals. The first scandal arrived when it was made public on July 18 that rider Patrick Sinkiewicz from the T-Mobile team had tested positive 1 month before the Tour started. Sinkiewicz had already withdrawn from the race, having incurred an injury during the 8th stage. The scandal was big enough to prompt German TV broadcasters ZDF and ARD to drop their coverage. The Tour was dealt a major blow when the first-place Astana team withdrew from the race on July 24, 2007, after team member and pre-race favourite Alexandre Vinokourov from Kazakhstan tested positive for an illegal blood transfusion. Vinokourov's teammates Andreas Klapp-Den and Andrei Kashichkin were in 5th and 7th place respectively at the time. At the start of the 16th stage on July 25, some teams made a protest against the laxness of the official attitude to doping in the race. After the stage, race officials announced that Cofidis team member Cristian Marini of Italy had tested positive for elevated levels of testosterone, and the Cofidis team withdrew from the race. Spanish cyclist Iban Mayo tested positive for EPO on the second rest day of the Tour, on July 24. French prosecutors want to start a legal case against Vinokourov, Mayo and Marini, and requested the UCI to hand over the doping samples. The UCI refused to give them, and in May 2011 the investigation was stopped. Other incidents: German cyclist Markus Bergart collided with a Labrador Retriever during Stage 9. The bike struck the dog on its backside, which buckled the front wheel and threw Bergart over the handlebars onto the road. Remarkably, the dog was unhurt by the collision, and it was grabbed by a spectator before it could cause any more damage. A second incident involving a dog occurred on Stage 18. Sandy Kayser and Frederick Willems were in a four-man break when Kayser collided with a dog running across the road, causing both him and Willems to fall. Kayser was able to rejoin the break with the help of Axel Mersckx despite receiving road rash on his right buttock, while Willems returned to the peloton. Kayser went on to win the stage. After Stage 16, overall leader Michael Rasmussen was fired by his team, Rabobank, for violating team rules after he told the team that he was in Mexico with his wife in June, then being cited training in Italy by Italian journalist Davide Cassani. Rasmussen disputed this claim, maintaining that he was in Mexico. Thus, at the start of Stage 17 there was no holder of the yellow jersey. Afterward the lead and the jersey were transferred to Discovery Channel's Alberto Contador. Rasmussen later in 2013 confessed to doping from 1998 to 2010, including at the 2007 Tour de France. Footnotes. See also, List of doping cases in cycling, references. External links, official website on the first two stages at the Wayback Machine.